Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Taped Vibes tutorial series. My name is Sebastian and today I will show you the process of finalizing the instrument structure in HALion. We will have a look at the reampings, the bus structure, additional effects and prepare everything for the final instrument script. Let's dive in. So we left off here the last time. The mapping for the DI sound is done. Sample starts for the sustains and release sounds are set, and the envelopes are dialed in as well. Next to DI, there is a tape and a preamp version in the final instrument. And for my reampings, I exported the tweaked samples from HALion. So let me show you my workflow. I further tweaked my sample starts and also sample ends and set a very fast fade in with an exponential-like curve to avoid any clicks. So very fast, I go for 0.1 with exponential curve like 100. It somehow looks like this, and this avoids a click in the beginning of the transient for the exported sounds. My sample ends are at a point where the tone of the note is completely gone, and there I have set a slightly longer fade out time. So in my case, 50 milliseconds with a curve of 50. With a right click in the program tree, and I go to import, export and export samples. I'll come to a little dialog in here, and there I can choose how this preset file is called, where it should go, and the same for the samples, where should the samples be, and the sample name. In this case, the wildcard, it shall remain the original names, but you have different wildcards to choose, and you can include different kind of chunks to your sample name for the export. You have options to change the file format, for example. You have also header options to include root key, loop settings, and so on in the sample header. And for me, in my case, the most important thing was, okay, I want to trim these samples because I want to get rid of the chunk before and in the end. I also want to include the fade ins and outs to be rendered in the sample. And I want to have the tune merged and the gain offset merged because the samples are already normalized and some I had to retune. This is also included in the exported DI samples. When I do this, I will get a completely new batch with all my samples at this location I defined, and I also will get a new preset file. I will load up this preset file and see you in a second. So I'm back with the exported layer preset, and as you can see, the sample starts right at the beginning of the transient. For also the release samples, for example, are cut to have only this little release chunk used and not the onset part I recorded before. The gain merge is done, so the gains are resetted to 0, the fades are reset to 0, so everything went good. For my reampings, I took this sample and have thrown them into Nuendo. You can use any DAW that you like. I just give you a quick tip for all the Nuendo users out there. So here are all my DI samples in, and I created 2 more tracks for my tape and my preamp version. So I select all my imported clips and go to Project, Create Markers from Selected Events. And normally there's this option activated, so combine adjacent events. This would make one big cycle marker over all events, but I actually want for each individual event a cycle marker. And I want the event name, so the clip name, to become my description. If I go for add markers, I see, whoa, there are lots and lots of markers in there. And if I go to my marker track, I see that all my markers are named as the corresponding files. So that's why the order doesn't really matter. But in the end, I can use this name chunk to export my reamped versions. So with this prepared, the fun part begins of sound designing, of finding the right settings for the reampings, and then I can record the tape and the preamp version as well. And I quickly go through the batch export settings, so audio mixdown, and I activate multiple channels, and I activate the tape and the preamp channel to be exported. And I also have to activate all cycle markers to be exported. And then I give them a naming scheme, and I started with the cycle marker name as an attribute. I have as a separator the underscore, and then I take the channel name as second attribute. So I get the suffix in the end of the WAV file that is called either preamp or tape. And by exporting these into two separate folders. I do the tape version into one folder that is called tape and one that is called preamp for the preamp files. And then I have my two reamped versions for all my DI samples. I quickly show you my my folder structure. So in my library folder in samples, now I have the DI, the preamp and the tape version prepared. So let's go back to HALion and see how we can easily implement those. So first I duplicate the DI layer by simply doing Control C and V, or on Mac Command C and V, and I rename this to tape. So later on my tape samples will be used in there. For now you can see they're going to my locally folder in here. So the tape drives, library, samples, DI, and then the sample name. I will write a little script that goes through the sample name and exchanges first of all this DI part in here, because now it has to look into a tape folder, the folder that is called tape, and it has to add the suffix _ tape in the end of the file name, so that the right samples will be found in the end. So let's load in here an empty script module, and as it would take some time to prepare the script on screen, I prepared it already. It's called replace sample name, and I will quickly walk you through the script. There are two defined parameters called replace sample tape and replace sample preamp. Default is false, and if they're getting changed, the function call takes place with the parameter tape or preamp. So this is the actual function definition, and now it's getting more interesting. It takes this little chunk that we hand over by changing the parameter, and I create a variable called system. And whenever system is written in here, this gets exchanged by either tape or preamp. So what does this function do? First, it gets every zone and finds every zone, and then prints out how many zones are in this layer. And then there is this for loop, and it iterates through all the zones in this found zones, and first gets the file name. So the file name is this long file path actually, where you see the location on my hard drive. Then I create a local variable called /format, and this takes the file name and gets rid of backslashes and formats them to slashes, so that Windows and Mac users can use the script, because there could be some trouble. Then I created a local variable called file path, takes the /format file path and replaces the DI part of the folder with the name of the system. So if we have a look at the sample path in here, this DI part will be changed to the name of the system, so either tape or preamp. Then furthermore, I take this file path and replace the part .wav with an underscore and the system name. So the suffix that has been added after the export will be added to the file name as well. Then I also need a new zone name, because otherwise, if you look in here, these tape zone names would be the same zone names as for the DI. So I'd like to have there an underscore tape as well. So I take the zone name, take the new file name, and then I have a little formatting thing going on. So it gets rid of all the parts that are before the last backslash. This is actually this formula doing. And then I take this zone name and create the new zone name, and I even get rid of the .wav, because this is some unnecessary information in here. And when the script is running through, then I get a printout of the file name, a printout of the new file name, and I get a printout of the new zone name. And then I'll take the zone and set the name to the new zone name, so these will be renamed. And after these are renamed, I'll exchange the file name and replace it with my new file name. So I hand over the new path to the actual file, to the actual zone. Then I'll print done, and I'll reset my two parameters to false again. Let's have a look if this works. So I go to sound, to my script, to my parameter list, and I replace it with tape. So this will take a few seconds. and it seems good. It printed out done. I actually have to show all lines. And it started with, okay, this layer has 702 zones in. And it took this part, and as you can see, it replaced the backslashes with slashes. And it also replaced the DI with the tape folder name. And it also added the suffix tape. And as you can see, it also changed the zone name in here with the suffix tape, so that I have unique names in my program tree structure as well. This only worked and had no errors because the files, so the tape files, are already here in my folder, and it found all the files. Let's quickly do the same thing with the preamp version. Just copy over the script to the preamp version, reset it quickly and let it run. And boom, same thing. You see, okay, they are getting replaced with the preamp, and I just quickly checked them. Okay, they are now located to the preamp folder and have the preamp suffix. So we are good to go and we can continue. And we have all the samples mapped to its correct place with all the same envelopes that we set with the DI, and so on and so forth. We also have the layer alternate in here, and this is layer alternating through the releases of the preamp version in this case. So we are good to go and we actually can continue. Let's continue with finalizing the instrument structure. And I'd like to introduce you to the taped vibes FX bus. So I created this bus beforehand and I inserted multiple effects in here. So you can simply go in the program structure and can, for example, go in here and get your effects and insert them like this. Or you can go over to the mixer. And if you go to the depend, you'll see that the effects are in here. They're right now bypassed, but you can insert them here in a more convenient way as well. So let me quickly explain you the order of the effects. So on an original Wurlitzer, you have this kind of tremolo effect directly on the instrument. So it belongs closely to the instrument, and that's why this is the first effect that I inserted. There's also a preset called Wurli Tremolo. This is actually super close to the original Wurlitzer vibrato effect. Next up, I go with the clipper effect. This is the distortion unit that I'd like to use. There are different and various distortions in HALion, but I got the best experience for this kind of instrument with the clipper effect. Then I added my modulation FX, so the chorus, flanger and phaser, the delay and the reverb unit in the end. We will have a closer look at some of the effects in this episode, but we will also make use of some scripting features that are affecting these insert slots, and this will be part of the next episode. Before we continue, let's make sure that our bus routing is correctly done. So I go to Edit Zone and go to my amplifying section, and I can see the output bus over here. So this is going to the taped vibes FX bus, and this is correct. I could also choose the pedal noise. So I want the DI, the tape, and the preamp all going to the tape vibes FX bus, and the pedal noise should go to the pedal noise. So this is correctly done. As you could see from the final instrument, there is a one knob distortion effect. So it's not multiple controls that I created for the user to address. It's just one knob. So looking at the effect, there are some parameters to tweak. And by trying out the hard clip introduces the harmonics that I was looking for. But of course, this makes the overall sound louder. So first I tried to find a good maximum amount of distortion. And in this case, it was around 70%. With right click on this parameter, I can first assign a quick control, and the taped vibes is representing the layer where this quick control should be inserted. So this is actually this layer up here. And I go to quick control 1. So as you can see, this is now called clipper hard clip. I will rename this to distortion because this will become my one knob distortion effects. And as the 70% is the maximum, I can do another right click and say, okay, set maximum. And I can go to a lower value and set this as my minimum value. And when I look into my quick control, so I go to this layer and I go to edit sound and to this quick control section. So if you have all activated, the quick control section is a little below, or you can also just go to this quick control section and activate this one, or lock this section so that you can open up another one as well. Just if you didn't know this. Then you see, okay, the quick control 1 is assigned to the clipper hard clip in relative mode, and you have this kind of range, and you can also add some kind of curvature as well. This is pretty cool because then you can really dial in how the knob should behave. Now I want a second parameter to be affected by the quick control. In this case, the mix knob. So first I assign this mix knob to the quick control, and it shall reach 100% mix, so effects only, when the quick control is at 100%, so as a maximum. And as a minimum, it shall be at 50%. So when the distortion knob is set active for the user, there will be a little sound change, like engaging an analog style circuit. I'll go for this minimum and set my maximum to this one. 50% is minimum, and this is my maximum 100%. So if I go to the values in between, so at round about the middle, it should be at round about 75%. And if you, as I said before, if you want to edit further this mix behavior, you can simply go to this quick control area and adjust this as well. Furthermore, in the final instrument, I'll made a kind of output level compensation. So I also assigned this output gain control. And while trying out and checking with meters, I came to -4 dB as default setting. So when clipper is engaged, I need this output gain to be -4 dB so that the level won't be boosted too much. So when you activate clipper, it has the same loudness. And when you use this knob and turn it to the maximum, I had to decrease the output gain to around -11.8 decibels. So the furthermore you increase this distortion knob, it won't get louder, you just get the effect of the distortion. This is a parameter it took some time to figure out, and it took some time also for testing and fine-tuning all the different values and the ranges. And this is something that I usually do over several days with different kind of headphones and speaker scenarios. And if there are multiple people in your team involved when sound designing, I also show this around to other people and getting feedback of them. As you now got introduced to the concept of quick controls, let's set another one, controlling our release volume of the release samples. With the release layer in focus, I go to the sound main part. There is this level knob, the level offset, and I assign this to another quick control. I assign this to the quick control 2 on this taped wipes layer, and it's called release level. This is good. I will do this for the other two as well. So if you turn the release down on the user interface, it will affect all 3 layers, regardless of what layer is actually active and sounding. So that if you switch layer, this level offset will stay the same. One quick note about the release levels. So with the quick control set to 50%, I'll dialed in the final instrument an offset of around about 3 decibels. That is somehow the default value that I assigned. And this sounded most realistic for me. But as a user, you shall of course have the option to increase from there on. So my max value leads to roughly 10 dB, while my min value leads to -infinity. Because there are some people who don't like release sounds at all, or some different kind of styles of music require different kind of sound settings. And so you have really the option to decrease the release samples and mute them, so to speak, completely. And now that a lot of musicians, they want even more control over the release, so I'm allowed to disable the release samples completely and have a length control over the ADSR release instead. So you can either have a really short release time or make it unnaturally long, like on a synthesizer. And therefore, another quick control is used to modulate the length of the ADSR release time. So let me quickly show you how this is achieved. So I go to my sustain zones and I go to the envelope. This is a kind of bad example because the first sample that is selected is one of the higher notes that are in one-shot mode. That's why this release phase is grayed out. But so I will select a different note. Okay, now you're seeing this release phase. And you can modulate this release time, how this is decaying out, with another quick control by right-clicking into this envelope and assigning the envelope release to another quick control. And I'll do this on quick control 3. And now I have this for one specific sample assigned, which is actually not what I would do. I would go for the whole sustain layer and assign the release to this quick control 3. And now let's go to the sound tab, to this quick control 3, and let's call this release length. And this now affects the envelope release. For this specific zone, I would have to assign those two sustain zones as well, that it will work. This was a little back and forth to find the right ranges for this quick control, so that if it's in the middle position at 50%, that it has kind of the natural release length that you would expect. And as this release length is dialed in to have a kind of crossfade time, to crossfade between the sustain and the release sounds, it should also restore to this kind of default crossfade length. And from there on, it can be increased so that the release length is longer, and it can be decreased as well. My last quick control assignment, so under the hood, goes on the reverb, and it actually affects the mix control of the reverb. If you would assign this mix control directly to the user interface, the range would have been from 0 to 100%. So, and I wanted to limit this range from 0 to 50%, but over the whole range of the knob that is available for the user on the user interface. Why? 100% mix leads to a really reverberant sound, and with having 50% as a maximum, this sounded way more realistic. A little like if you send your dry signal to an auxiliary bus on a mixing console and have the reverb inserted on this auxiliary bus, and with both faders at equal amounts, you definitely have enough reverb signal, but you also get a good amount of the dry signal and direct signal. And to mimic this kind of behavior, I set up a quick control on the slot 4 with control over the reverb mix, and set also my min and max ranges for this. Before saving this work and finishing up this episode, I'll quickly load a preset of the final instrument. So you can see that how the quick controls are assigned finally. So my distortion quick control has kind of these ranges. So this is the mix knob, this is the hard clip knob of the clipper, this is the cutoff, has also a little modulation on it, and the output gain, as I mentioned. For the envelope release goes to the DI release, the tape release, and the preamp release layer. And the release level goes to my 3 different release layer, holding all the samples and adjusting the level offset. And the reverb mix goes from 0 to 50% over the whole range of the knob. You can dial into the exact routing and the exact numbers and values in the final instrument, as it is not protected. And you can also have a look in here. So it's time to finish up this episode. When it comes to designing a sample-based instrument, it is essential that you know your sampler extremely well. There are various ways how you can achieve different things, and some are very time-consuming and others are super convenient and very easy. So with the use of scripting, for example, you can save so much time compared to map all the reamped samples by hands and adjusting the envelopes and make sure that everything is completely identical. Scripting can be very, very powerful if you once dig into it. And with the use of quick controls, as I showed it to you right now, it's a quick and easy way to create, for example, custom one-knob effects without any knowledge of scripting. So I really hope that I could show you some new sides of HALion, and take your time, explore it for yourself. As we now finish the program structure completely, we will take the next episode and go through the final Lua script, the instrument script that holds all the real-time functions that are available for the user. So thanks for watching, subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss the next episode. Have fun exploring the new learned HALion functions, and see you in the next one. Bye.